Is the CFO of Jasmy leaving? Well, the short answer is no. And I'll explain why in today's video, even though nothing I say is financial advice, and this is just purely my opinion. But the reason why I know that he's not going to be leaving is because he literally responded to someone not that long ago saying how, of course, he's not going to be leaving. So someone by the name of Giannis asked him, does it mean that he's going to be leaving Jasmy, basically, somewhere along those lines? And as well as leaving Jiangshan, because we do know that the CFO of Jasmy happens to be the CEO of Jiangshan as well. But he says, of course not. Now, why is this even a point of contention? Some people may be wondering, like, why is this even a topic, anyways? Like, who thought he was going to be leaving? Well, actually, a lot of people thought that the CFO of Jasmy was going to leave. The reason why, and this is actually going to be a quick recap of what I talked about in my previous video, but it does make sense for today's video as well. So let me just give a quick recap in case someone didn't watch my previous video. So the initial kind of worry when it comes to the CFO of Jasmy potentially leaving was because he made this very long post. Now, it was in Japanese, so I had to translate it to English. But basically, once translated, it was very ambiguous. We didn't really know what was going to happen. And it was basically a post announcing how Hara, who is the CFO of Jasmy and the CEO of Jangshan, that's his name, right? But he basically made this announcement, and it was kind of like announcing somewhere along the lines of how he might be joining something called Remix Point. Now, in case someone doesn't know what Remix Point is, long story short, Remix Point, it's pretty famous in Japan. They are the founders of BitPoint, which is a pretty massive exchange in Japan, but they have sold BitPoint, but I'm just saying they are the founders of that. And then BitPoint does list Jasmy. So, of course, naturally, when the CFO of Jasmy, right, and the CEO of Jiangshan makes a post saying how he might be joining Remix Point, it gives kind of this, I guess, worry, right, where it's like, is he really leaving Jasmy and joining Remix Point? A lot of people thought, how is he going to be able to juggle all of these things at once, basically? So a lot of people were really worried because in this very long post, or this long essay, I should say, he never once mentioned that he was going to still stay with Jasmy. So it was very confusing. But then now we get clarification that, again, he is not leaving Jasmy. So that kind of confirms my previous belief, because in my previous video, I thought to myself, it just didn't make sense why he would leave Jasmy like that. Like, for what? Right? Okay, he can still be at Remix Point, maybe, but also it doesn't diminish his duties or activities in both Jasmy and as well as Jiangshan. The example that I even used in my previous video was, I think, a pretty good one. It's like, Dana White from the UFC, right? Remember not too long ago when he joined the board of directors at Meta? It didn't mean that he was leaving the UFC for Instagram or Facebook. That's not the case. He's clearly still part of the UFC then and still part of the UFC as of right now. So by extension, Dana White is part of the TKO group, right? Because TKO, they own the WWE and the UFC. But besides that point, again, Dana White joining the board of directors at Meta didn't mean that he's leaving the UFC. So I thought to myself, okay, maybe if, let's say, Hara joins Remix Point, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's automatically leaving Jasmy or Jiangshan. But case in point, a lot of people were still concerned because nowhere in that very ambiguous post, which was filled with a bunch of riddles, by the way, which was very confusing, he never mentioned that, oh, he's going to be staying with Jasmy or Jiangshan. He didn't mention that at all, from what I can find, right? So, of course, it naturally got a lot of people worried, and a lot of people started exiting Jasmy because of this, which was kind of surprising. But it kind of makes sense in hindsight because he didn't make it clear. But now he did make it clear because he responded to someone basically in the comments, and he said, of course not, which basically means that he's not going to be leaving. Which again now has kind of cleared up the air that, you know what? He's not going to be leaving Jasmy. He's not going to be leaving Jiangshan. He's going to be staying with Jiangshan and Jasmy, but maybe on the side he might do something with Remix Point, which I don't think is a bad thing. I mean, I even mentioned this in my previous video because if anything, he can help Remix Point, and I think Remix Point can also help him as a result. And indirectly, I think that could help Jasmy, right? Because Remix Point is pretty massive. Again, the CFO of Jasmy has a lot of work experience. So inherently, it's kind of like mutually beneficial in that sense. Why is that a bad thing? So yeah, it kind of clarified, I think, a lot of worries, a lot of kind of questions that I felt like could have been addressed a little bit sooner. That's the thing. When it comes to Jasmy, they don't naturally update that much anyways. So of course, kind of sometimes when there's an announcement or even a response to an announcement, it's usually kind of delayed. It's not like other projects out there that do it pretty fast. At Jasmy, at Junction, it's more slow paced. It's more relaxed, right? That's the way I view it, at least historically. So there was that kind of delay, and within that delay, a lot of people did leave. So yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I can't do anything about it, but I didn't leave though. I mean, I just thought the whole time, I just didn't see why he would leave. Now, even if he did leave, I wouldn't really care that much anyways because Jasmy's team is very robust, right? It has a lot of people who historically I've seen used to work at places like Sony. So it's not like one person leaving is really going to impact the whole project like that. But at the same time, I get the kind of concerns because despite Jasmy having a very robust team, the most vocal out of anyone in that team is, of course, Hara, right? Hara being the CFO of Jasmy and the CEO of Jangshin. If we don't have him anymore, let's say with Jangshin or Jasmy, the updates would be pretty much very close to zero, right? I mean, who else is going to be updating when it comes to Jasmy? That's the thing. So I guess that's kind of a point of contention. People saying, "Oh wow, if he leaves, no one's really going to update the community anymore." At least in terms of like, talking about what's going on. So I get that. It's a very valid argument, but at the same time, even if he did leave, it's not like it would just automatically affect the fundamentals of Jasmy. That's not the case in my opinion. Jasmy is still very focused on data storage. Jangshin is very focused on AI. So it's not like he can just randomly affect those two projects by simply just leaving. But of course, if he did leave, it would create like a very big gap where there wouldn't be too many like updates, it seems like to me anymore, because he is the most vocal individual, I would presumably assume, in the Jasmy team. So of course, he does play a role, but I don't think it's like the end all be all if he did leave, but clearly he's not leaving. So yeah, low prices could be viewed as in two ways, in my opinion. I can either view it as a good thing or a bad thing. In which case, for exiting, I'd view it as a bad thing. But for dollar cost averaging, my lens is that I don't view it as a bad thing. It goes with like just anything, I suppose, in real life, right? If I want to buy shoes, I'd like it if it's at a discount. If I want to buy pants, like, jeans or whatnot, I'd like it if it's at a discount. It's kind of no different, I suppose, within this space as well. Low prices could be viewed as in two different ways, either a bad thing or a good thing. It depends on the lens. So for me, when it comes to the lens of dollar cost averaging reasons, I don't mind. That's my perspective. But for exiting, then I would mind as of right now because clearly Jasmy is still at around a 300 million market cap. To be a bit more specific, it's actually around 295. But you know what? For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to say it's around 300 million because, saying around 295 is going to be very long and kind of confusing at times. But besides that, what this all just means is that Jasmy is just around 7 times lower than actually compared to where it once was in December of 2024. Well, it's like, okay, if it goes back there, I have like zero things to complain about actually. But it requires waiting, right? And I feel like if anything, if it never even reaches that point anymore, if it just goes to half of that, I don't mind. But again, the fundamentals, that's pretty hard for me to kind of wait for because it already kind of has to be there in my opinion. But waiting for the market sentiment to change, that's a different case. The market sentiment changing isn't dependent on the Jasmy team, right? It's not dependent on like, anyone in the Jasmy team, in my opinion. It's dependent on a broader change in market sentiment. That I don't mind waiting for, but I'd like to wait with a project that I'm a fan of fundamentally. That's the thing. So I'm still dollar cost averaging just once a month, that's it. But the whole main purpose basically of this video is to kind of explain that when it comes to Jasmy, long story short, the CFO is not leaving. That's kind of it. And also, by extension, because he is the CEO of Jangshin, he's also not leaving. So yeah, however, I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward when it comes to Jasmy, so hopefully y'all stay tuned for that. It's Willie the Captain, I'm out, peace, bye.